Good morning, everyone. Apologies, it's a slightly earlier time than usual, and I apologize that some people will pick this up in 10 minutes time, but it's just the schedule, the way it works out for the next couple of days. I can't do it in shul, but we will get back to some consistency, please God, next week. Anyways, today's learning is dedicated to memory of Binyamin Akiva ben Shlomo, Leah Bas Paiva, Rabbi Yaakov Tzvi ben David Arei, Tzipora Fegel, Bas Ruben Baruch, Paul Casimir, Shalom ben Eleli ben Bas Paiva, Moshe Shana Bas Yaakov Shmuel, Caleb Bela Bas Henachim Yochi ben Moshe Eliezer, Samaka Bas Binyamin Shlomo Yechia ben Yeshua Levi, Avram Mordechai ben Moshe Katna, Ari ben Shimon. So yesterday we discussed, you may recall, a bit better. Yesterday we discussed about a love which is dependent and contingent on something. It will not survive. It will not perpetuate. Whereas a love which is not dependent on something, then that will be eternal. That will be forever. And we said the reason being because if that love is dependent on something, and the thing that you rely on and that you pin your love on disappears, then the love will disappear, and so on. There is a wonderful story that Rav Elia Lapian tells relating to this, just before we move on, and that is regarding the fish lover. And the story goes about a man who proclaimed his love for fish. He's sitting in a restaurant and with somebody, and he's speaking about his great love for fish, and all of a sudden the waiter brings in the menu and he orders one of the fish on the menu. He says, I'd like to have this fish to eat. And the waiter takes down the order and off he goes. And his friend watches what's going on to his amazement for this fish lover, and he follows the waiter into the kitchen, and he gives the order to the chef, and the chef takes one of the fish out of the bowl, out of the water, gives it a whack over the head, and starts to cook the fish. A few minutes later, he comes back dazed, having seen the fish, being prepared, and the fish lover, still declaring his great love for fish, tucks into this meal. And the friend turns around to the fish lover as he's eating the fish, and he says, "You don't love fish, you love yourself, because somebody who loves fish would be somebody who would be into conservation and preservation of the fish. It wouldn't be somebody who's eating the fish." And that is very much true when we speak about true love. Love that is dependent on something is something that where you are putting, you're totally thinking and dedicated to making the other person happy. You do not come into the equation. As soon as there is a self, as soon as there is self-interest, and what am I getting out of it, and what's in it for me, then you don't love the other person. It's really that you're loving yourself. Just wanted to finish off with that idea. Now we continue we're in chapter 5. Mishnah 20. Mishnah goes as follows. This is the new Mishnah. Any argument that is for the sake of heaven, it will endure. It will continue forever. If it's not for the sake of heaven, it will not continue. Which is an argument for the sake of heaven. So says the Mishnah, that's a machlokes Hillel and Shammai. What's a machlokes that's not for the sake of heaven? That's machlokes Korach and his congregation. Many questions, and many of them we are familiar with. Let me just go through them very briefly. So why would we want an argument to continue, to persist into the future? Surely it's the exact opposite. If, we're here to be marbim shalom ba'olam, we want to have peace in the world, not that we want an argument to perpetuate. And yet, we say an argument for the sake of heaven, it's going to continue forever. And if it's not for the sake of heaven, it won't continue it won't continue forever. What's the examples of that? An argument for the sake of heaven is that between Hillel and Shammai. And an argument that's not for the sake of heaven is an argument of Korach and his congregation. Many questions. Korach and his congregation were fighting against Moses, against Moshe. So why does it say the argument is with Korach and his followers as opposed to Korach and Moshe? And so on and so forth. Let's just explain very briefly because time is short, and it goes as follows. An argument that is for the sake of heaven is where both people are, or both parties are pursuers of truth. and they are interested in arriving at an understanding of what is the absolute truth. So whichever perspective, whichever viewpoint you take on, it doesn't really matter, because both viewpoints are just seeing the world and through the prism of the Torah, and therefore they are arriving at a true perspective. And therefore the argument between Hillel and Shammai was an argument purely for the sake of heaven. They fought tooth and nail, backwards and forwards, to probe the depths of an understanding of the particular issue, and to arrive at a fresh appreciation as to what is the truth. That is what they were trying to do, as opposed to an argument that is not for the sake of heaven, like Korach and his followers, that they were only interested in one thing and one thing only, and that was they were interested in their self-promotion, in their self-interest. It was all about what they could get out of it. They weren't actually interested in the issues. The issues were just a means to an end, and therefore, obviously, their opinions are worthless. And therefore, we don't continue to discuss the ridiculous arguments of Korach and his followers, because we know that they were not sincere. It wasn't genuine. It wasn't based on truth, and therefore, it will not continue to exist. An opinion of Hillel and Shammai, both of them are coming from an authentic place, and therefore whichever perspective you look at, both of them have validity, both of them will endure. Truth will stay forever. Truth endures. It may be that one of the opinions, for practical considerations and purposes, we need to follow. You can't follow both Hillel and Shammai in this world, but that doesn't in any way detract from the validity, from the authenticity of both their opinions. Okay, so we've learned one Mishnah, we've understood it. I suspect some people will be coming on in a few minutes and be very upset that I had to start early. Apologies, but it's just one of those things. I had to do this Mishnah at home today, and we'll be back to a normal schedule next week. Let's just finish off with a memorial prayer. Adonai Lamim Zacho Es Nishmas Ben Yaman Akiv Ben Shlomo Leah Bas Faivel for Arav Yakusi Ben David Ariad Sachs Tipper Feigel Bas Rud Baruch Hu Kasm Shalom Ben Elali Ben Bas Faivel for Mishon Bas Yakushmo Kele Bela Bas Enach Yom Yochia Ben Moshe Eliezer Marco Bas Ben Yom Shlomo Chia Ben Yishua Levi Avram Mordechai Ben Moshe Katna Ari Ben Shimon Shalchu Lilamon Bagan Aiden Temenu Chasam Lachim Ben Rachamim Yatzivim B'Seisa Kanafav Lelamim V'Yitzah B'Sachas Shasam Anna Nachasam V'Yanuchu Amishkavam Shalom v'namar amen. Lastly, for Shlim prayer, Misha Bechav Zenu Avram Yitzchak Yaakov, Moshe Aaron David Shlomo Yivarech v'Yirapet Zacholim. Bavo Shani Mispalim Bavo Ram B'Chazak Hakadosh Baruch Hu Yimalei Rachamim Aleihem Lachman Ufosam Lachman Ufosam Yishlachim for Shlim Nishma Melcholim B'Tzach Shachar Yisrael B'Fos Nefesh V'Sagav Hashabak Zmakarib v'namar amen. Wish everyone well. Please go have a good day, and look forward to seeing you at one of the many programs that are coming up. Looking forward to seeing everyone. Keep well, look after yourselves, and please God, we will see you very, very soon. All the very best. Take care.